this afternoon, not as full as the last meeting. So I'm hoping that this afternoon we will be finished on time at 4 o'clock. I've always found that meetings that last more than 2 hours, people and I tend to glaze over, and then we tend to get a little bit irritated and so on. So I'm hoping that we do finish at 4 o'clock. So please don't be offended if at times during the meeting I do sort of move things along, just to make sure that we've got time for those items towards the end of the agenda to be fully addressed. We don't run out of time. Okay, right. We'll make a start then. So item number 1 is apologies for absence.
So apologies from Councillor Carrington, Lucy Skates, Peter Mackenzie-Brown, Steph Brown and Victor Clark.
Mr. Chairman, I shall be nameless because I haven't got a name.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I am new to this committee, so could I make a statement
You may.
or say something?
Yes, indeed. Please introduce yourself.
Right, my name's George Marsh. I'm a retired farmer. I've been chairman of my local parish council. I'm also on a walking group, not a Ramblers walking group, I might add. So I do walk the footpaths in Lincolnshire, and I hope that I can make a useful contribution to this forum.
Very welcome.
Thank you.
Item number 2, any declarations of interest from anybody? Oh. Okay, very good. Minutes of the previous meeting held on the 22nd of October 2024. I assume 24. I assume that everybody's received copies of the minutes. And so, any comments or matters arising from those minutes? The minutes. Okay, if I could have a proposer that they're an accurate reflection of the meeting. Thank you. Second. Yeah, thank you very much, Barry. All those in favour? Yeah, okay. Accepted. Thank you. And then one of the things that we agreed at our last meeting was that we would maintain an action list so that we can keep track of the actions as we go from one meeting to the other. So we have an action list there, agenda item number 4. Emily, would you like to run us through that?
Yes, so all the actions have been completed, and also at Appendix B to the report, we've got the letter which we agreed to write to Lincolnshire County Council. So we brought that today. We're just asking for the forum to agree that letter, amend it if they want to, but agree the final version to then get sent to Lincolnshire County Council.
So that letter is at Appendix B. The date obviously will be altered there. Any comments on that letter?
It's been superseded.
Yes.
It needs clearly needs rewording, but I think we need to put some very strong words in there to suggest that we actually will need to be taken to reduce the backlog, and suggesting that the plans are put in place to reduce that to 0 by or to negligible by within 7 years, because I think it's, unless we say something definite, nothing definitely done. So I'd like to see a phrase put into that letter. The general content I thought was very good, but it's obviously been superseded by the imperative of the cancellation of the cut-off date.
Yeah. Noted. Any other comments?
I'm not sure what we're doing with it. Sent the letter. Are we now going to vote on sending it, or what?
Yeah, so the letter hasn't yet gone.
Yeah. So
the idea is that this is a draft, that we received comments. Those comments will be taken into account before the final letter is sent.
When will the decision be made to send final draft?
Now, you're agreeing the final letter as soon as you've agreed this after the meeting, I will send
Yeah,
it.
so we're now going to have a discussion on what change or
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Yes.
I would suggest it's amended, bottom of page 17. It was apparent these measures would not be sufficient to address the backlog of applications by the the previous deadline of January 2031. Then add something along the lines of, although this deadline has now been removed, the forum emphasises the urgency of addressing the outstanding applications, wishes to raise its concerns, and then alter the last sentence to something like, we would expect these applications to be processed within 7 years from the date of this letter. The backlog would be reduced. The backlog would be reduced to 0 by 7 years from the date of this letter.
Are you happy with that one? Would you take this one?
I prefer it to case though, because that's what makes it sound like we've done nothing. No, the issue here is that.
Yeah, fine, case, okay.
But if I may, Chair, I'll just make a point that the deadline hasn't been removed yet. And what's actually happened is there's been a declaration that there's an intention to repeal the cut-off date when parliamentary time allows. There's been no legislation to date tabled that I'm aware that does that. So whilst we've had the announcement of an intention on Boxing Day, as far as I'm aware, there's been no movements yet within Parliament to do it. So just bearing in mind it isn't a done deal yet.
Yeah, sure.
That's when the legislation is passed.
Can you put the word, sorry, the word assuming that the cancelled.
Yeah, I think we get the gist of what members are saying. What I suggest we do actually is we prepare a final draft, taking those comments on board. It's sent round to members for a final scan. And then if there's no comments come back, then we send that letter. Is that agreeable?
Yeah.
Just so that we're quite sure on the wording.
Yeah. Can I say something else?
Yes. Yes.
On the removal of the deadline, at the moment, the only source of information of what was just been said last 5 minutes was to hear it on the news on the radio. And I appreciate Andrew's very busy, but if when something like that is happening, changes the legislation, a very brief email can be sent out to the forum, keeping us up to date. Because we come to a meeting and people are talking about this, it might be there are people here who haven't even heard. Just to very briefly keep us, I mean, in this particular one, it'd be a case of the minister announcing, so we will keep you informed when there's more news. That sort of thing.
That's okay. Sounds good.
That's it. That's very sensible.
Okay, thank you. Anything else on the actions? So the other actions, as Emily said, have been closed. Nothing else on that item. We'll go on. Okay, good. So then we're on to agenda item number 5. The County Council Rights of Way Improvement Plan 25 consultation response. I know that the working group has been spent a lot of time on this to date. Andrew, do you want to run us through this one?
Absolutely. So what I don't propose is go through the large document, but there's been there's 2 meetings of the Rights of Way Improvement Plan subgroup of the local access forum that's met, and there's been some really good discussions and feedback from that. And from those discussions, the draft improvement plan has been developed and has been looked at with some recommendations from the subgroup for the forum to consider and make any other recommendations. The next step after this meeting and after advice from the LAF from this meeting will be to go for publish it as a draft improvement plan for public consultation, which will be a 12-week formal public consultation, and the aim is to put that in place mid to late February or at that sort of stage. We've had approval to do so within, so that the consultation will span the pre-election period, because it's asking for opinions rather than making a decision. After that, just follow that through to its entirety. After that point, after the public consultation, there's a period of taken into account and making any changes that come through, and then taking it forward to councillors for approval and adoption as the final Rutsway improvement plan.
Yes,
And if you want to summarise the subgroup meeting, it's only a paragraph but to take if those that were there, Chris and so on, would be aware of what we said. But the idea was that we went through it in some detail, the road, and Andrew has taken away a lot of the suggestions. But to summarise them, the key points were getting the backlog of the DMMOs, which we've already covered. Further engagement with parish councils and other organisations in maintaining, improving rights of way. And I'm quite sure Andrew will be mentioning that when he gives his presentation in a minute. And then the forum also highlighted, let's say forum, it was actually the sub-working group, a need to integrate the plan with other local plans and strategies. That's a bit of a broad brush. And I, for one, am not aware of all the others. I'm no longer involved in planning applications, for example. So we're probably going to have to rely on Andrew and his team to keep us updated. But a lot of the things like John's points about access points and so on, we did take note of those and we have pressed it. The parish councils one I'll speak about a bit later in the next agenda item, because I've got some good news.
so opening it up for comment from members, the draft and also the appendices there from the working group.
Who's on the working group? Okay.
There were 6 of us in total. We did it online.
Equestrian interest.
Sorry?
Make sure there's somebody advocating for equestrian interest. That was all. That is.
Andrew really chaired it, but felt it more appropriate that one of the working group summarised what we discussed. We had a lot of us had scrutinised the road as it then existed in quite some detail. So I think he was busily writing notes furiously while we were talking.
Absolutely, I was. The only thing that's not included in sort of recommendations here is just the typo stuff, which I've taken as an immediate change. But the rest of it was for discussion and agreement for the wider forum.
Any comments? I think at this point it might be useful to members if I just speak briefly about government plans for local government reorganisation. So I sit obviously on North East Lincolnshire Council and I'm a member of various committees, review boards and so on. So you may be aware that the government in December has set out a white paper in terms of local government reorganisation. A letter was sent from the junior minister, Jim McMahon, to all leaders of all associated, all affected councils and the chief executive. So the government is pushing hard for 2-tier councils, so that would be councils such as Lincolnshire County Council to become single-tier councils, and unitary authorities, smaller unitary authorities such as North East Lincolnshire to effectively amalgamate. So there's about 170,000 paid people in North East Lincolnshire. The government has set a rough target of 500,000 people per unitary authority. So that essentially divides Lincolnshire into two unitary authorities of about 500,000 people each. If we're going to move over to a single tier system of government, local government, that means the district councils would be dissolved, borough councils would disappear, probably town councils would disappear. So this is the biggest change in local government that's on the horizon for decades. And the government has said it wants to work at pace on this. So there was a response made by the 3 leaders of the 3 key councils, Lincolnshire County Council, North Lincolnshire Council, North East Lincolnshire Council, responding to the government so that they're ready to work on pace. They want to make this happen quickly. So you'll see a lot more about this and hear a lot more about this over the weeks to come. But they're pushing for this to happen quickly as well. So a lot of the things that we are talking about in terms of this in particular right of way improvement plan and so on, it may be that in 2028 we end up with two big unitary authorities. So, this is not wasted work by any means at all, because this will form the foundation for perhaps for one or both of those plans that the government is talking about. But there's a huge amount that's happening sort of behind the scenes developing. So Secretary of State Angela Rayner, she's writing, or what she wants is formal proposals to go out for change. Will go out in March, and they want a response by the autumn of this year in how local government is going to be reorganised across the country. So there will be sweeping changes to come. And certainly, I was in a meeting the other night with our chief executive, and North East Lincolnshire will probably most likely amalgamate with North Lincolnshire Council, and that will take in probably the East Lindsey and probably West Lindsey as well. So you get it with one huge council that will go from Louth, maybe even down towards Skegness, right the way across underneath Gainsborough, right the way across, and that will be one unitary council. How it's going to work, I'm not sure yet, but there are huge changes to come for sure. So it is going to impact on certainly on the work that this forum does. So just to put that out there in terms of context. Okay. If nobody else has any comments, I have sort of just one or two observations.
Can I just make a quick right comment? We are today sitting in the building which was built as the county offices for an organisation called Lindsey County Council. It seems we're going to get a full circle.
The question, and I'm not revealing any secrets here, the question is what happens to Lincoln City Council? So if you look at Exeter, they're applying for their own unitary council status as a standalone unitary authority. The question is whether Lincoln is big enough to do that. If not, Lincoln City Council will disappear, and of course that's going to have huge ramifications. As you can imagine. Yes, Barry.
Yeah. In the document that was sent out, there's Appendix B, which a different place possibly. Appendix B is there's a list of changes that was taken from the which as a person who was responsible for quite a few of them, I would like to see. I think we probably need to resolve to include those changes in the document. The document as it stands is the same one that was issued earlier.
Right.
Appendix B contains a number of relatively minor amendments to the text in various places. As a cyclist, one of them is, for instance, cycling is mentioned a few more times. We could take them as a block, and if people have read them and think they're okay, then we can do it as okay. I don't think there's anything particularly contentious. We looked at it at the subgroup meeting, but I think we can't just not deal with that. We have to either reject or accept that those changes need to be put into the document.
To be clear, Barry, it will be part of the consultation response. So the LAF can't agree for that to be changed. This is part of the consultation response we'll then put to Lincolnshire County Council, and hopefully they'll make them changes, but it's for consideration by the County Council if that's
right. So the work we did in the subgroup doesn't actually change the document. We only are allowed to make comments on the document. Is that
Effectively what, and the reason why the changes haven't been made that you've made yet is so that it forms the advice to the council, which we then respond to.
So they're not getting lost.
Not getting lost at all. It actually makes it stronger. So it becomes, this is what the LAP has done, this is what the LAP has changed. Form of advice that we have to take into account the law. So it becomes that part, and we're able to then respond and say, yeah, added this, or no, we don't think we have this because this, that, and the other. So we'll have the opportunity to go through that and anything else that comes up.
So, but the LAF presumably needs to agree or otherwise to put these things through.
Yeah.
So can I propose that appendix is agreed by the LAF as being recommended changes by the last group.
Yeah, we can do that. Yeah, unless there's anybody who doesn't want that to happen. Everybody happy for that to go, those to go through as recommended changes? Just to be clear, these are recommendations from Rights of Way Improvement Group Plan Subgroup Appendix B, which was attached to that agenda.
Yes, it's page 109 to 113.
Yeah, so unless the lab want to add anything else to that, that will form the consultation response to the advice to the county council.
No other comments on that. Okay, just a couple of comments from myself. One is that the plan, obviously, it's a 10-year plan, so it needs to clearly indicate it's 2025 to 2035, even though there may be changes over that period of time. The other thing that occurred to me, just sort of looking at this from the outside in terms of all the actions, there's an awful lot of proposed actions and changes that are required there in terms of that action plan, that it might be useful to try and put some sort of timescale on them, or to subdivide them into short, medium and long-term plans. Obviously, some of those are going to take a long time to come to fruition, but there are going to be some things that should be relatively quick wins. So just looking at this from the outside, from a council perspective, I think it might be useful for them to say, okay, this is what we need to be doing now. This is maybe 2 years down the line or whatever, because it is a 10-year improvement plan. Not everything is going to be done in the first year. That's for sure. Yeah,
One of the things that I believe is in that appendix is the suggestion that there's metrics so that we can measure success, because otherwise we just got, that could be just regarded as, in my tendering experience, warm words, that unless we put some metrics that say this measures whether we've achieved it or not, and then we know it's been successful. It could just fall into the warm words category.
I think sometimes the danger with a 10-year improvement plan is, people say, okay, well, we've got 10 years to do this. Budget's tight this year. We'll defer it. And then you end up, it's just parked on the shelf and nothing actually changes.
That was particularly acute with the reduction in the backlog. If we're going to achieve a reduction in the backlog within 7 years, there needs to be a reduction every year. So that's one we definitely could have some metrics on it.
Yeah, there's a couple of other things that struck me. One is whether we need to specifically talk about young people and children, encourage them improving their access as well. We're doing things sort of for the next, this is for the next generations as well, that we're trying to do this. And I know in North East Lincolnshire we have programs to try and get children out into the countryside, observing nature, learning the names of birds and so on. You look at, and understanding farming as well. You look at the statistics, the number of children that can identify more than 5 birds visually. It's minimal. It's just nothing like from when I was, a child. So I don't know how members feel, but I'd like perhaps something in there that talks about future generations, or how we make sure that we get young people out there. Yes, Peter.
I got my ear bent not very long ago. I think in rural communities, particularly, the influx of families coming from an urban background is having an impact. They don't understand the countryside. I partly raised on a farm in Wales, and sheep worrying. The whole business about how you treat the countryside is not understood by too many people. And certainly landowners have raised that with me. It was a farmer that bent my ear in the local pub. And that is something we have to address. And it's back to this issue about communication. I will mention signage because I picked up some very good advice on that and how it might be funded as well without using county council money. But I think we underestimate the impact of the influx of people coming from urban backgrounds. You can tell from my accent, I was actually raised in the West Midlands, and but I've lived all my life in rural communities. I do see it as a chairman of the parish council. It was always income was coming from urban backgrounds that didn't understand where they could walk, why their dog could go in a field one day and then there were sheep in it the next. There's a whole range of issues. Treating scheduled monuments is a big one in my village, or mistreatment more accurately. So I think that's something we need to take into account, and I'm not quite sure how to best garner, because all I've got is anecdotal evidence so far.
Yeah, I mean, I think the new generations, they're very keen on green issues, protecting the environment and so on. That is something that a lot of children understand. But if they're not out there and learning about the things they're trying to protect, it's not going to have that same impact. Yeah, Wendy.
In the appendix, you have got about the sort of different characteristics. So, and there is a section under each saying what's the significance of this. So perhaps that's the place to put something in. But I do think, I know what you're saying about anecdotes. I do think there needs to be something evidential there. So we need something about, the impact of being outdoors, the health and well-being impact. What does the research tell us? Sorry, I come from a higher education background, so that's important to get something in there.
Yeah.
How to behave around horses is an absolute classic one as well.
Well, how not?
I was going to raise the same point, and a difficulty I have is that over the years, recent years, I've encountered lots of references or reports to research that's been done on the health benefits of walking, of being out in the countryside in itself, and even one which was about the effect of smelling nature. These are hard scientific reports. The difficulty is when you need to write about them, finding out where you put them, having the reference. And somebody must, various organisations, national organisations, with different interests, with some are health, some are public access, some are nature conservation, and bringing all this together so that we got a reference. Somebody somewhere must have a record of all these reports and scientific researches and so on.
Natural income.
ChatGPT, I'm sure, would help you with that. You can scan
Who's going to do it? And one of the ones of the economic benefits is that it's possible to do research. I remember, I think it was to do with walking. I might have got through the Ramblers. For some reason, Bristol University comes into it. I might have been back. That calculating how much money, spending money on public rights of way, saved the National Health Service. The difficulty is it's a purely statistical thing. You can't say this person benefited from it, this person didn't need an operation because of it. But there is actually a lot of hard scientific one, hard evidence that it saves money.
The ORN are doing that work at the moment with some researchers, so there will be that data available, but not yet.
There is an NHS paper which suggests it's between 1.5 and 3.5 billion pounds.
Yeah, but this is the point. Everybody can come up with a reference. I think at a national level, we need to sort of reference so that we can tag on the reference to our opinions and say, here's our evidence. So,
May I just go back to the issue of farms and new incomers doing it? The farming community have done a great job with their open farm days, just introducing people, welcoming them onto their farms and explaining what happens if you climb on a bale of hay or.
Absolutely. The number of people that come out in early June on a farm and have a look, the number of urban people who want to learn is unbelievable.
So the people are interested. It's just getting the two communities to welcome each other and educate each other.
Absolutely.
And I think this forum is key to that. But as I say, particularly the next generation who are going to be the custodians, you know, if they don't understand it, they're not going to try and protect it as they get older. Nigel?
Yeah, all very good. We're just obviously going to make sure the network is good for these sort of families to get out. I'll just give a recent example. It was, I think, Digby, Dorrington Way, children's play park, path going out onto the fields and quite heavily overgrown. So it's good. And they are the sort of paths we need, be reported, but accessible, because that's where the people are going to go out into the countryside. So it's good to get people out. And I think from a previous job, I was involved in taking young people out into the countryside. It's that if we do it once, who's going to follow it up to do it again to get that drip effect to keep them out there? Because you will get some people from the group that quickly go.
I mean, as part of this, I looked at 6 other rights of way improvement plans across the country just to sort of get a benchmark feel as to anything that we might be missing. And I think the best one that I could find today was Kent County Council. And if members get time, just have a quick look at the Kent County Council one. The links in that in the information and so on is excellent. And I'm sure that some of the lessons that we can learn, because eventually this will be a web-based document, of course. People aren't going to pick up a paper copy and read this. They're going to go onto the internet and check out the links and the hyperlinks and all that sort of stuff. So it is going to be, and Andrew myself had a discussion, I don't know those very well. You know, this is mainly going to be a web-based document. It has to be web-friendly, and it has to be, you know, it has to be engaging as well. And all the hard data and stuff needs to be in there, but there needs to be stuff to attract people to read it as well. But I'm sure that will come out in the fullness of time.
Yes, just to clarify on that, and it's a really good point. What you're seeing here isn't necessarily finished format, it's the proposed content. But the actual format itself and how it's presented, still got to go through essentially our communications team, our engagement team, to make it much better. It is in its form, only what I've got the capability of doing on my own laptop and my own skill level in terms of design.
We also then therefore wish to add the recommendation that the final plan includes the evidence base for the health and economic and other benefits of a pushing forward a rights of way improvement plan, and really leave the technical experts to produce that. Just to make sure that it doesn't go over the
we could we can put that forward as a recommendation. Yes.
On the same sort of subject that Nigel was talking about, obviously we've got the DMMOs, which we know we've got an awful lot of, but we also still have our existing rights of way in this area, which aren't subject to DMMOs because they're already on the definitive map. But what I'm certainly finding, and I'm sure other people who are users of the rights of way are finding, that when we go to these particular places to either ride our horse or walk our dog or anything, the state of the tracks is in a really, really dire condition. I'll give you one example. There's one at Temple Woods near Aylesbury. I reported it to Forestry England over a year ago, who made a bit of we'll do something about it. And we went there not only 3 weeks ago to walk to see if this restricted byway it was even worse. We had to clamber over 4 fallen trees along the restricted byway, and when we got to the end, kind of had to crawl under the overhanging hedge. They weren't enormous fallen trees, but because of that, the state of the track was getting really, it used to be a restricted byway. Now, you're never going to carry it down, it's that wide. You can just about walk down it. But I know, having seen things from rights of way from other areas of the countryside, there's a lot of areas try and engage local communities to have volunteer working groups. Often these are under the auspices of perhaps a couple of council workers for health and safety reasons are there to supervise. But, you know, you can get people together. People will happily, if they use the rights of way, go with a chainsaw or a handsaw or a few clippers and clear these paths, because I've reported this on Fix My Street and I've had a thing back that it'll be done within 90 days, but it's done within a year, so I don't think it will be. But resources, councils haven't got resources, that there's sort of more priorities than clearing rights of way when it comes to limited budgets and where to spend them. So surely the way forward is to engage the local communities who are using these rights of way in their local areas to try and keep on top of it. Surely that would be a huge improvement and not too much outlay for any big authorities.
I absolutely agree with what Elaine's just said. In my village, Balsingham, which is about 10 miles south of Lincoln, the community have just put in a community wood on 1.5 hectares of land. And the response from the village and local people to planting those trees and getting it in good order was amazing. The people are there.
You just have
do
to
it.
engage.
It's just getting them around to do your project.
I think, you know, good councils, they facilitate this. And certainly in my ward as a ward councillor, myself and my 2 colleagues, we organise litter picking days. The community comes to council, provide the litter pickers and 5 is vests, and we'll go out. Sometimes we get 20 people litter picking, and the council will come back at the end of the day and pick up all the rubbish. So all those sorts of schemes and everything, yeah. Like you say, volunteers will do it. Sometimes they just need to know what's going on and a little bit of, you know, a little bit.
They need to be told when it's happening, where it's happening, what's needed, and what time to meet. And then most of the time you put it on the village Facebook groups. Yeah, 30 people will say they'll go, 10 people will turn up. But, you know, it's 10 people. It's 10 people that you didn't have before.
Yeah.
10 people working for a couple of hours, chittering away and, you know, having the odd cup of coffee out of their flask. You can get an awful lot of work done.
Yeah, that's very good.
Yeah, and we've done a similar thing that Cherry William was ours with the thing place we call Cherry Fields, and we've planted 11,000 trees, I think now, with large numbers, up to 50 people, residents have come along and done that. So it does work, but that's the reason it worked was because the parish council organised it. And one of the things that I was quite keen to stress in this document is that the getting somebody local to take ownership of the rights of ways, the natural place for that is to encourage parish councils. Now, not all parish councils really think it's their job to take an interest in rights of ways, but I think it's something that Andrew's group potentially could do. And I also belong to another group that's pursuing rights of ways locally and whatever. And one of the things that we've managed to do is get invites from about 7 local parish councils now to go along and to the annual parish meeting to encourage the parish council to take some ownership and interest in both maintaining their footpaths and the like, and trying to seek new ones where there's a planning application and other things. So I think it will pay dividends for the county council to try and persuade parish councils to take both organisational responsibility and a certain amount of financial responsibility for improving and maintaining the things. One of the things I know we've managed to get grants as parish council for resurfacing some of the footpaths and everything. Although technically probably it should be done by LCC. If we go and do it, then it's done and it benefits the local community. So it's something visible that parish councils can do, that people can see that parish council's done for them. So it's quite a win-win really for parish councils in a PR terms. But it probably just hasn't occurred to them to do it. So, but to achieve that, somebody has to go to the parish council, if you like, and say, you know, come on, you could do this. It's a useful thing you could do, because not everybody's thought of doing it. And
I think it'd be worth putting some resource into that, is what I'm saying, to motivate parish councils, because I think as you were saying, the chances of the resources from the county council coming to cut the grass or do whatever you is diminishing.
Okay, thanks.
There is a history to this. County council did at one time have a scheme, county council, where parish councils that wanted to do this would get the money for routine maintenance, for the mowing and hedge trimming and that kind of thing. And so, but they had to apply for it, show they could do it, and sign up to it. I don't know what happened to that scheme, if there's anybody left who remembers it.
Yeah, I've heard
It's probably the case, yeah.
I mean, I'm hoping this document will sort of be one of the energising tools that will start to kickstart some of the stuff if we can get
Just
it
one
right.
point, while you're talking about parish councils, many communities which cover the rights of way around them in Lincolnshire haven't got parish councils. They have parish meetings, which is a once a year. Our one in the village we're in, and the one where we keep our horses. They're both very active. And we get emails from them, so we know if anything's happening. So we mustn't forget parish meetings as well.
Yeah.
I'll mention that.
Because that's a huge, huge.
I'm very aware of it. Surrounded by redundant parish councils that don't do anything.
Okay, I was just going to, had a good chat on this. I was just going to, and I hate it giving other people work. I didn't know if the working group wanted to just to have a look at all those actions and sort of think about timeframes, realistic timeframes, whether they would be short-term, medium or long-term actions. I don't know how the working group would feel about that. Wouldn't take too long, I wouldn't think.
Do you want me to cover it now?
Well, it's going to need that list going through and deciding which is short-term, medium-term and long-term aims.
Oh, yeah, the prioritisation
Yeah,
of different things.
Yeah.
But what I can add is that I've found at least 7 funds that are likely to assist bodies interested in access to the countryside, including, stranger, this one did catch me out, was DEFRA. And what I've now got myself in a bit of a jam with, lottery is a classic example. One guy from the Lottery Heritage Fund, dead keen, I outlined it. How can we help communities improve signposting? It might be pointing you to scheduled monument, it might be pointing you to lovely view. It doesn't really matter. But also how to behave in the countryside. Now, this is over and above the sort of thing that the team here, Andrew's team, are involved in. The plain public footpath sign, you go a stage further. Little whopping is 1.5 miles that way. And it's back to the business about communication. And the difference I found is one guy from the Lottery as a classic was really in favour. I gave exactly the same information to the Wards for All, whom I've dealt with over the years and obtained quite a lot of money from. And that lady really didn't understand it, so I've had to set it out. So of the 7 organisations I've discovered that would fund it, some are very localised, they're the landfill funds, so on. But most of them, all bar one, have said, yes, the business about helping communities benefit from access to the countryside is in line with their objectives. And what we probably need to delineate, and Andrew and I will hopefully come back with a proposal on this, is that we've got to be careful that we aren't asking for grant funds for things that the government's already obliged to do. Maintenance, star replacements and so on. We've got to delineate between the two. Do we apply for it as a county, as a group, on behalf of the local, and have a central fund? And again, one organisation said, yes, they thought that was the best idea. Other one, no, the local user will have to apply. So there's a lot of work to go through, but there is money out there. And if we can encourage, starting with parish councils, and incidentally, I'm going to my parish council tonight. Every time I turn up as the ex-chairman, they all quake in their boots. But they've already agreed with me that there'll be a pilot scheme, and they're quite prepared because they are keen to make sure that the footpaths in and around our parish are made best use of, and that people behave when they're on them. So my proposal at the end of, let me finish, Andrew. What I'm going to propose is that we suggest half a dozen, maybe maximum of 10 parish councils that we can run a pilot scheme with, sound them out and see if they're willing to take it forward. Because of where I live, I've already got agreement, for example, that 2 adjacent parish meetings, we only meet twice a year, they're quite prepared to join in and let my parish council take the lead. So if you could dangle a carrot, i.e. there's grant money here in front of you, how best to use it to benefit public access, reduce harm to the countryside, particularly for landowners, but people like the Woodland Trust and the Forestry Commission are equally keen that it doesn't get damaged. That's over and above the remit that Andrew and his team have for the current maintenance. But it will need a bit of working out. The other thing is that in terms of approaching councils, Andrew and I have already agreed that we're going to go to the next Lincolnshire Association of Local Councils, AGM, where they have presentations, and we're going to do one on public rights of way. So I've got to get my act together and make sure I've got a carrot to dangle in front of them as well as a stick. The stick being, I've had enough prosecutions in court, thank you very much, for sheep worrying dogs and criminal damage on farms. That's a way ahead that we did have. Chris mentioned it 20 years ago. There was quite a proactive movement along those lines, particularly in the south of the county when we were joined for this purpose with Rutland. But it just seemed to have withered away. I don't know why. I totally agree with what the chairman said, by the way. I had a very long Zoom conversation with Kent. These aren't many of my ideas, pitched them from everybody else. And Kent were one of the most helpful ones. Northumberland were also very good. Funny enough, a lady in Scotland was also very helpful. So what I'm putting forward are things that I've gleaned from other local access forums. I would add the counter to that is what worried me was how many LAS didn't respond. I would think something like 20 to 30% are almost moribund. So there are cunning plans afoot, and the detail will be in how we think local government will react. What the chairman had just said about abolishing town councils, well, if they actually operate legally as parish councils, they're just bigger. That'll be interesting to see. But it is mostly the rural communities where we can gain the best benefit for the wider public. You know, John beats his drum, and quite rightly so, for ease of access for those people who are less able. And I have to admit, I fell off a bloody stile a fortnight ago and was limping for a couple of days. It's a wider subject than an individual footbridge over a dike or whatever. We've got to get grassroots involvement and active involvement back on the menu.
Okay,
That makes sense.
Thanks, Peter. Just going back, is it a good idea to try and put a time frame on all those actions that we've listed? I know we've prioritised in terms of high and so on. John.
Sorry, I agree, it's a good idea.
Okay.
But what I would suggest is you define this short term, medium term, and long term in terms of years.
In terms of years, yeah, I completely agree. If there are no other comments, I'm going to move on to the next agenda item.
Just in Chair, I know we spoke about just coming back to the subgroup in terms of timeframes. I'm not, with our next meeting being scheduled for April, I'm not sure. I can't remember when you said we were going out to public consultation, but we'd need to agree the subgroups. We need to agree the work of the subgroup before we went back to the local authority before Andrew then went out to consultation.
I'm just thinking finishing that piece of work. Andrew, what do you think?
I think what I need to do is start the consultation. So I think if one of the forum's actions could be to recommend to the council that the actions are put in timeframes as you've suggested, rather than necessarily asking themselves to do it.
Okay.
But whilst it's in public consultation, that does not preclude the forum from looking at it again and providing more advice.
Okay.
Can I just quickly check in terms of the consultation? I've got the group's recommendations, and then I've got what we talked about, young people and access to the countryside, a recommendation around that, and then health benefits of the countryside. And I can capture a bit of the discussion in that as well. But in terms of recommendations, then are they okay for everybody, or we added anything else?
Anybody wants to add any recommendations? Okay, good. Thanks, everybody.
Before we move on, I'll just say one thing. In terms of the volunteer things, I think everyone's made some really good points and it will all be captured. On page 58, there is a sort of engage and promote. The first actions are developing and promoting the use of volunteer support. So actions like that could fit in there. But what I was going to suggest is that we have a full-time officer, Debbie Blond, who looks after the Viking Way, but also manages our team of volunteers. So I suggest if the forum would like, I can invite her to the next meeting or another convenient one to talk about the volunteer schemes and what she does. And it also gives the forum an opportunity to provide advice straight to Debbie as well.
I'm one of Debbie's volunteers, so if you've got any immediate questions, do ask me after the meeting.
Okay, so moving on to agenda item number 6, Lincolnshire Joint Local Access Forum Purpose and Process. So we're starting at page 121. Actions required. Members of the forum are invited to consider the report and discuss how it can be most effective. And I believe it's yourself, Peter, that's presenting this.
Yeah, we tended to cover an awful lot and went to the paper. I should, for those of you not aware, I actually wrote this last August. That time the GMOs were 450 and I think it's only 560 now. It doesn't change the issue that it's a growing situation. And again, in the last, since Christmas, talking to 3 other LAFs, they're still seeing DMMOs coming in. And I think what stirred interest is because organisations or society, the Ramblers and so on, have been very proactive, it's prompted a lot of individuals to start submitting. Well, there's a footpath I used to use as a kid, is an often remarked on one. Andrew can fill us in, but I understand that they are still coming in. We are still getting DMOs submitted.
Yes, the last I checked, it was at 585, but the level of applications per week is going down. And so I think if we've reached a point where you can exhaust your evidence base. Lincolnshire is lucky to have quite a lot of evidence base, but at some point you come to the end of it. I believe we may be to a point where there's all the applications that could be made have been made.
Yeah, well, that's not a surprise, but it's I remember the days when we had 43. So it is a big issue, the business about DMOs. Now, how do you prioritise them? And that was one of the things I spoke to a lot of the AFs about. Anybody picked national parks and so on have all gone through this. And there are lots of different answers. But the most sensible one, Kent was extremely helpful in this, is we had the double Zoom, back-to-back Zoom meetings. It went on so long. And that is that within their LAS, they were prioritising the DMMOs they thought would bring the most benefit to the wider community. And you do have to sometimes step aside. I got my ear bent because a footbridge over a stream in my village. Then we thought it was my fault that the flood had damaged it. And guys actually fixed it pretty rapidly. But the point is that if you're not careful, you get bogged down to the individual situation. What you want is a wider application of effort. And the volunteer scheme, not volunteer as well, I thought was brilliant, but he had, I don't know how many Debbie's got on her books, but probably not as many as there were 5 years ago.
The last I spoke, we had about 67.
Sorry, Chris, go on.
Yeah, with Chad's permission. Prioritisation has different meanings and there are completely different senses of it. There's one in which you say what's the most important thing to do, and the other is the most efficient way of working. And I can claim some background in information processing where these things are really important. And they do actually apply in the same way, almost in a mathematical sense. And I have seen over the years, the processing of DMMOs be done in a very inefficient way, in the sense that they keep generating little work. I mean, I don't want to go into too much detail about it here, but I think there's a lot to be thought about there. It's conflicts sometimes with the other sense of priorities of what's the most important urgent case. Just if you can keep bringing to the fore things which are said more important, in the sense that perhaps there's more pressure being put on you to get it completed, or it seems like this right of way will be more useful if it's done. But then if you're putting back something which has been half processed, when you come back to that half processed one again, you're redoing a lot of work that's already been done. And people lose the momentum on the case, or an officer retires and a new officer has to take over. So I don't want to go into more detail about it, but that's an important thing to bear in mind. You can get a feedback mechanism there, which inefficiency creates more inefficiency, creates more inefficiency. You get the whole thing bogs up.
Yeah, I thought we moved on to agenda item 6. But one of the things I've observed before with the, and I was hoped that by doing the letter that stresses the group's dissatisfaction with the current situation, that we could, in a sense, put that to bed, because otherwise we seem, and I know it's an important thing, but we have to put that to bed, because otherwise the meetings are going to get dominated by discussions on the DMO backlog. So I think we keep to the agenda. Is what I'm asking.
Yeah, I think it clearly that it is an issue, even in this agenda. I don't think it is an issue. But I take your point, Barry. Other comments. I mean, I would just say before the comments, this is a really substantive piece of work. It really is, Peter.
Well, the benefit of talking to other local, and I've booked appointments to go to some of the local ones. Wendy's probably better at it than she must belong to about a dozen. Is that you can learn from their mistakes, and that's always the benefit. My first criteria to answer Chris is if it doesn't meet the paragraph in section 94 as to the improvement of public access to land, if it fails at that, then it's got to go down the priority list. It must meet that as an initial criteria. The other work I did was, and that's following on when I wrote the paper, was this business about finding funds. Now I have catalogued it. I'd say the lists I've got, and I've signed up. It doesn't cost me anything, to an organisation that advises on fundraising. I got money from all over the place, both to the parish councillor and when I built a community shop in my village. So I'm pretty good at scrounging. So some of these quite surprised me, because their criteria for the improvement of rural communities includes public access. And that's why I've got 7 on this list. There may be others. When I get my, I forgot the name of it now, it's an organisation that tells you about grant funding. You can do it geographically, you can do it nationally. I used to belong to one that told you about EU money. I think that's probably dead in the water. But nevertheless, we may be able to find funding over and above the budget that the county council give to Andrew and his team. You just have to sniff it out.
Could I ask that we go back to this is all very useful and it's great to have the resource, know where the resources are, but I think we really need to focus on the agenda. And I would suggest that we move on to the actual appendices to this report, which actually have the relevant bits to make this a properly functional advisory body. The terms of reference proposals for the Access Forum. That's on page 127 of the total collection of minutes.
Well, I take your point, but I think it actually is useful just to have a look at some of the background as well for members. I do take your point. I'm going to allow, we'll carry this through till sort of about 20+3 time wise. So we do have a little bit of time. It just in terms of the report itself, before we get on to the to that. So I'm looking at basically right the way through to conclusion. Are there any comments, any disagreements as to what's actually in the report?
Worth adding on, by the way, I wrote it as a stimulus. I wanted to kickstart thoughts about how we benefit the wider public, not just how we meet the rather blunt wording for writing the road. If you miss out the key point about the benefits of giving access to the countryside to the community, then all you're doing is defending something that's already in place. You're not improving it.
I mean, one of the things that struck me as ringing true is within the summary, the statement that the most effective lads are those that are able to harness ongoing public support.
Yeah.
And I think moving forward, that's going to be absolutely key. You know, the most effective organisations are the ones that get public support, but also are able to work very, very effectively with other groups, other organisations, and to network. That's how you really, drive things forward and make an impact. I think moving forward, that's one of the sort of key things. Just in terms of funding, Peter, and I'm very interested to hear what you say about funding channels. Perhaps we can put that on agenda for another meeting. Do we look?
I'm still looking at it.
Do we look particularly at funding streams, opportunities for grant funding, how we generate more income, more budget for this group? So I know there are issues around leaflets and so on, but so there's a working budget. So if need be, things like the Lincolnshire show, we can go and have a presence there. But I think that actually is worthy of an agenda item on its own, possibly at the next meeting, if that's okay with members. Just looking at where we get money from.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I just make one point about DMMOs? Yeah. The other thing I gleaned post Christmas was that, and I don't know why I hadn't thought of it before. Why can't we recommend a DMMO? This would be based on the information we have, but I discovered the only local council I could find that actually had guidelines on it was, for some reason, Nottingham City Council. And there is no reason why an LAF, or for that matter, Andrew's team, should not submit a DMMO where it can be seen to benefit the wider public. Very few LAFs I spoke to had even thought about it. They assumed that the submission of DMMOs came from somebody else. They were reactive.
I'll just answer that very quickly on that front. Some of them are actually what we call self-initiated. They don't count as a application as such. So there isn't an applicant with a right of appeal. But there are some of the cases that we've got on the 584 that we've got at the moment are actually self-initiated. About only a small amount, about 10 to 12. But the DMMO priority is being looked at internally because the policy is scheduled for review. With the level of applications we've got, the current prioritisation process isn't really working. So it is being looked at in terms of what we can do on that. So I've got a note on here to discuss that, and it's something that I think the forum could be involved in.
I think it certainly should be.
Okay. So I think we've sort of looked at the report body. So just getting into the detail now of the appendices. So if you perhaps look first at Appendix A, which I have on page 126 of the agenda. So in terms of reference proposals, are there any comments on the appendix? Anybody want to see anything change?
I'd like to see it sort of personalised to Lincolnshire, so that 311 would read something like this: the Lincolnshire Local Action Forum is an advisory body section 94 of the Crow Act defines its statutory function as being two, because this is just a general take across. And then that can be put with the bits that are on procedure, the appendix B. So you've actually got these lays out very clearly what we're here to actually do. I know it does in a sense at the moment, it does, but I think it's really important to personalise it to us.
Make it more specific.
Yeah.
Okay. How do all the members feel about that? I think that's probably the big one. Yeah. So we go through and we try and make it specific to Lincolnshire as possible. Obviously, you've got the wider context of legislation and so on. Yeah.
Yes, you can refer to the legislation, but make sure it is Lincolnshire.
Other comments or observations? Next slide. Happy otherwise? Good. So then we'll look at Appendix B, which is priority aims and objectives. I've got it on page 128 at the top. People want a couple of minutes just to have a quick read through. That's absolutely fine, just to refresh their memories. So top page 128, appendix B, we're looking at. Any comments, anything else that people would like to add in there? Yes, Chris.
I'm not certain about this, but I just wonder if it might be useful to mention the craft holders in there, mention the MMOs. Just to reference the fact that will prove making that will that's diversion or effective creation diversion.
Good.
I only say that because we're mentioning the MMOs, but not the absorbed.
Yeah.
I agree with Chris. We really need to have that there.
Well, just in general, in Appendix 3, it refers to the MMOs. I couldn't see any reference to public platforms. I just wanted it to have a marker that is one of the tools by which the rights of way network is improved, is by making diversion to creation orders paths. Because that particularly when it things like the dead ends, that's to resolve the dead end is going to require either the ability or extension.
Yes, and in a way, public path orders are, they can be pragmatic ways of solving some of these evidential applications.
Yes,
That avoid, yes, need to effectively run to planning inspector as well.
well, sometimes you can a DMMO, like everyone saying, yes, we need a tap there, but the historic one's in the wrong place. You can resolve it or making it not make the DMMO unnecessary by diverting the path before it's put on the map.
We have actually done that in some cases through PCOs, and it is a tool that can be used to practically solve the situation on the ground.
It's not a big point. It's just that to use the reference there just puts the marker. That is not.
So the aims and objectives we've got here are just what Peter put forward. So we don't formally adopt this or anything, but if you want me to have a look through these and look to incorporate that into alternative reference and bring something back. I don't want us to agree to amend something and it not go anywhere, that's all.
I don't have a problem with that. Bear in mind, objective, it's got some time.
Yeah. So do you want us to keep this aims and objectives to sit behind?
The aims and objectives should stay, yes.
They aren't formally adopted within our terms of reference. But I'm happy to keep them aside, but they won't be anywhere adopted formally.
I'm more than happy with that, Emily. Keep beating a dead horse, but you can't make it run any faster.
But eventually, the terms of reference will need to be reviewed at some point, and we'll need to.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Do you want me to look at reviewing them and
Yes.
incorporating it?
That was a suggestion from myself to review that. That we formally review the terms of reference, and we look to include this moving forward. Larry,
Bit confused. Presumably there is a terms of reference document that already exists that.
Yeah, appendix D is,
Oh,
I think, that's our current terms of reference.
yeah, so this is obviously quite a narrow set of references and names, if you like. It doesn't encompass the whole scope of what we're intending to achieve. Because there's nothing about recommending, if you like, recommending things to council and whatever. So I haven't read the other one. I'll read it.
Yeah, it's quite brief, our current one, which I think we were aiming to put more into that and personalise it and put more of our aims and objectives in there.
In effect, I think what we're suggesting is that appendices A and D are combined,
Yes. Yeah.
personalised, and that appendix B, I think it was a good thing to put alongside it. Technically, probably not in terms of reference, but it gives us a guidance to what we actually do as we go on. So we've got the terms of reference.
it can always be an appendix in terms of that. Yeah.
Just in appendix B there, C2, yes. Just might be the way that I'm reading it, but it says options that can increase user type availability. For example, I would say to upgrade footpath with Lionel. And I would say to allow a wider range of users or cyclists and horse riders, just to be accurate.
That's all right. That was my intention.
I think it's just listed as an example. I don't think it's.
Yes,
Yeah.
but if talking about an upgrade to bridleway, then I
By
would
definition,
ask that it's
right
not,
away.
it's not only for cyclists.
Sure, yeah.
Primary user on a bridleway is a horse before any other user legally.
No, cycling.
Yeah.
Right, just as much right.
If the horse has right of way first, and then the cyclist isn't.
That's the communication side, Angie, and you do need to make people aware of it. But I would argue that anywhere a horse can get through, a wheelchair can get through.
Generally,
I
yeah.
would disagree with
Yes.
that.
Just depends.
Yes, fair enough.
Certainly.
If it's about somebody else.
Just on that. So just looking at E, improve LAF membership competence by encouraging trainings, briefings, presentations for members on legislation, bus budgets and existing research. Is that something that members feel would be beneficial?
Yeah.
So, I mean, just as a suggestion, and I know we have 2-hour meetings, but I'm very keen that we do make it 2 hours, no more than 2 hours. But what we do, certainly North East Lincolnshire Council, is that say we've got a decision to make on budgets. Prior to that budget meeting, we will have a training session, and somebody will come in and give us a training session, so we know what we're talking about, hopefully. So I don't know if members feel that it would be a good idea, say before a meeting, that we organise a voluntary training session. So if anybody wants to come in a bit early for training on a specific issue, we can organise it that way. I don't know what the members, how do members feel that they want to get the sort of training and competence improvement? Yes.
The user rather than the council member or official, I would really appreciate more background
Information.
training.
I would welcome that, Chairman, as well. Obviously, it's a new person, I haven't agenda stuff up as much as possible. But something like that may well help the flow of the original meeting if everybody knows what they're talking
Yeah, and some people already do, I don't. But certainly for me, sort of training session, I don't know if that's feasible, is it, Andrew, before a meeting? Maybe if it's just half an hour's training or
Yeah.
whatever.
I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, okay. Okay, it just seemed a convenient time to raise that. Anything else on appendix B before we move on? Okay, appendix B,
Just a list.
which is just on this, I think, consulted. But yeah, that's a hefty, hefty piece of work, looking at all those flats that have been consulted, a lot of time involved there. Okay, moving on to appendix D, terms of reference. We've already mentioned this in passing, that we will need to expand on that. Anything specific in there that people don't like or want to see expanded specifically? So at the moment, item number 4, conduct of meetings. We've said we'll meet a minimum of twice in every municipal year. And all meetings of the full will be open to the public. We can leave that as a minimum of 2. That means, the interim meetings that we have are just interim meetings. Are people happy to keep it at a minimum of 2, or would people rather increase that number? Yeah, so in terms of reference, say we have a minimum of 2 meetings per year.
Oh, yeah.
And the question I'm asking, should it stay at a minimum of 2 per year?
You know as well as I do, the most successful ones meet more frequently than twice a year.
But it very much is a minimum.
Yes.
If there isn't pressure to have more meetings, no point forcing one. It's something that's going to serve the purpose, but I anticipate seeing the laugh we've got now with membership, that there will be more.
Yeah. Barry?
Yeah, I'll suggest a minimum of 4, because if we don't target at least 4, then things can just get put back and so.
Yeah, I must have, I tend to agree. I know it says a minimum of 2, but I can't see how we could possibly get through the work, to be honest, with just 2 meetings. And no, not everybody has to attend every meeting. They're not compulsory, of course. What I was going to suggest is moving forward, and Emily, yourself and John have sort of exchange a couple of emails on how we open this up to online participation, whether that is possible. And I think it's agreed that within the parameters of the formality of meetings, that if it's a decision-making meeting, there has to be a face-to-face element. But there's no reason why people can't join online, albeit the fact that they're officially not present, and they won't be able to vote on any issues. So moving forward, it may be, and also having public participation online as well, so that we try and open it up and make it as inclusive as possible. So it says a minimum of 2. What's the best way to approach this? To have a proposal second to increase that, or do we just leave it?
I don't know. There's been conflicting ideas.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm just trying to think of how to resolve this.
How about I propose 4 and see what happens?
There's a proposer to increase it to 4. Is there a seconder to increase that? Yeah, so several seconders. Okay. So I think the best thing is to take a vote then, when we keep it minimum 2 or increase it to a minimum of 4. So all those in favour of increasing it to a minimum of 4? Okay, let's carry. Okay. Anything else that people want to raise on that appendix in terms of? No. Okay, very good. So we're absolutely on track in terms of time. So unless there's anything else on that item agenda, we'll move on to agenda number 7, countryside for all. That's received a report from yourself.
Thanks very much. Some real good news and a lot of bad news, unfortunately. The good news is
Lincolnshire County Council made a decision within 3 months, which is pretty good. Well, we've been waiting for information for it for some time. So in terms of the leaflets and the funding, what we had been talking about for a number of years is having Just Giving and getting that funds through Just Giving, because it's getting more difficult to get funds from other organisations, other funding organisations. But Lincolnshire County Council has said, got to remove Just Giving from our leaflets, which is going to cost us money. And it's also said that we've got to take down the Just Giving page that we've got. Just Giving page that we've got is going down today, yesterday. And we will go back to the printers. Certainly the person that does the design to take off the Just Giving page so that we can't get any more funding through Just Giving. It's a great shame. And I'm going to talk to the rest of the subgroup to see where we go with the disability subgroup. Because if we can't get funds, and we were legally allowed to get funds from Lincolnshire County Council's funded bodies. However, somebody said we couldn't do that. And, you know, you're just closing so many avenues for funding. It almost makes it so much hard work that is it worth doing it? It is worth doing it, but at the end of the day, we want to see something for it that helps the disabled. So we're going to have a discussion and we're going to decide whether to dissolve the group or what we do going forward. And I'll let you know that next time we meet, if we meet again. So that really is it as far as Countryside Hall goes. Lincolnshire County Council has actually killed it.
Would you like to?
Yes, it was unfortunate. We've gone through a number of different areas asking the question because we weren't able to advise. So it's gone up from our essentially strategic communications through our finance team, the advice that the Just Giving page causes a problem in terms of how it's effectively asking members of the public to donate for more leaflets that the council's got its name to or is tied to, but also the technical elements from a public sector finance point of view, how Just Giving is managed, how it's transparent, all of the elements in terms of all the finance rules that the public sector have to combine with. So the advice you've given, which I'm happy to prepare in terms of the lab as well, has come through that. But Emily and I have chatted with Steve earlier, just in terms of what we can do. So we are still necessarily what to do is look at what we're able to do. So one of the key elements in terms of Just Giving is where does the money come from? Who controls it? You know, how is that transparent? How can it be audited publicly? And all of those sort of information couldn't be answered. So there was, and it was also counted into what the council does and how it's how members of the public wouldn't separate the independent local access forum from Lincolnshire County Council in terms of what it's doing. There is still some work for us to be done because we've had some legal advice on it, and we want to make sure that, you know, clarify what we are able to do to take it in a more positive way. At the moment, I haven't got anything to report except that we are still looking into it, but that's the advice we've been given so far.
Can I just say that this meeting is going to happen within the next month. So if you've got nothing to bring to us, we'll make decisions on what we have. Because you've been aware of this for 4 or 5 years, and this is the response we get.
Yes, I'm aware of that. I'm aware of the lengthy amount of time it's taken to get an answer. I do apologise.
The other thing is we've had grants through various organisations, including the lottery. And you don't know where that money has come from apart from the lottery. It comes from me and you buying a ticket. You don't know the individual and their background. Why should we need to? And this is just the same, just giving it. Well, I agree there could be shady characters giving money to the lottery as well as to just giving. It's money that is given to a good cause. For you, we actually put it in your bank at times for you to manage, so you can see the money going. You can see the money going out. You know where it goes.
I can, yeah, I totally understand where you're coming from. All I'm really able to do is, in this situation, is seek advice from our finance teams and our communications teams, and then communicate that back. Beyond what might when give.
Yeah, I'm addressing it as Lincolnshire.
I totally understand where you're coming from. Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's fine. And if you'll take a note, we are still working on it there. But I know the timescales of your meeting. We'll be, emailing around and trying to get meetings together to try and get something back in as soon as we can.
Yeah. The other thing you might not be aware of, Shine, which Lincolnshire County Council uses to send funding out to various organisations, also has a Just Giving site. So why should they be okay? I'm glad they are, but why aren't we? And the other thing is, when we've gone to Shine to apply for funding, they've been quite happy for us to do so. And there's been a question a couple of times whether we would be allowed to do so. We take it to your legal department, who says yes, but somebody in the county council says that's not the way we should work. So, you need, as a county council, they need to get their act together and come to us with something that is in writing that we can both understand, so that it can help us point the direction where we get our funds from. But as I've said before, getting funding from these organisations is more difficult now. We've gone to private businesses and spent a lot of time within the group talking to various businesses, and we've only had one success. That's not going to keep. That's not going to keep us going in leaflets. And as I say, we need information. We need it fast. We need the right information. Otherwise, we may not see us again.
Ask you, John.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, being part of your I know. What's going to happen to the existing leaflets? Are the council saying we can't leave those out in the community and use them?
Unfortunately, none of the existing leaflets have got Just Giving on. It's the ones we're spending money on now to get them through. So what should have gone out last year hasn't, because we've been waiting for information from Lincolnshire County Council, and it doesn't seem to be that there's no speed behind it. I want the right decision. I want the decision I want, but I want to see a decision that's thought through and see it in writing, please.
Sorry, go ahead, and then I'll make a comment.
Yeah, it occurs to me that presumably there's some member of the council who's got responsibilities for accessibility to disabled people, if you like. And if I don't know if you could approach such a person, but if you've got a champion who's a county councillor, that can often shift things quite substantially. So it might be that would either unlock funding or get some sense out of the decisions. I think if it's worth trying that.
It would be nice to know who it is.
Well, I mean, there must be somebody who's been
tasked with that as a responsibility within the council, I would have thought.
Well, I would ask that councillor come and address this group and let us know how he can help or she can help. Because at the end of the day, we're fighting pretty hard to get these routes sorted for everybody, not just people that are disabled. Anyone can get those leaflets, but it is a hard battle. And if you pull in the plug like this, you know, it's just soul destroying. We'll go somewhere else.
I think, if I may, firstly, you need a definitive response in writing as to what the council's official position is on whether, and you know, as a councillor myself, I understand some of the issues that the council will have. Not just, you know, they may be quite sympathetic to what you're trying to achieve, but also you get into the thing about setting legal precedents, and sometimes these things can open up a can of worms. But you definitely need a definitive response. And then what I suggested earlier is actually on the agenda. We need, I think, an agenda item to look at funding, to see where the funding, what funding we need, particularly for yourself, John, where it's going to come from, and see if we can get some ideas. And as a group, you know, we can perhaps go out for funding as well, because you know, I understand how difficult it is. I know how difficult it is to get funding, and we need to look at all available funding streams. And it is really difficult, but not just getting, you know, a bit of money, but having that money year on year that you need. So, and it wears people down. Trying to get money, it wears people down. I understand that. So I think there's two things we need. We need a definitive response, and then also we need an agenda item. Peter was already saying, you know, that there may be funding streams. We need to see how we can sort of tie this in to try and take some of that weight off your shoulders, frankly.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Could I ask,
Sorry.
what sort of fund amounts are we talking about, John?
It's not a lot of money, but it needs to be regular. So I think it's about £800 to £1,200
Per year?
a year.
Yeah.
Yes. But if we increase the number of sites, we could go up to 2,000 quite easy on today's value of the money and what we get for the leaflets.
Are you happy with that as a way forward, John? I know you've been, you know, this has obviously been going on for an awful long time, and I'm trying to see a way that we can get this.
I'd like to see an answer, no matter what, within a month.
I will also push for that as chair. Good. Anything else you want to talk about on agenda item 7, John?
Well, until we get a response, there's no point. As I say, I'll be reporting back to this subgroup.
Okay.
We'll have thoughts, and depending on what answers we get in a month's time, we'll have the actions ready to take.
Oh, okay, I'll bring back that. I just want to make a comment. Go ahead, Bruce.
I say that we've Cherry Field has been inspected. You know, that's been some useful feedback on ways that we can improve our paths to satisfy the requirements for access. So it is a very useful thing to be able to have people go out and assess sites. So I think it's good, you know, to keep it going. Obviously, you can then publicise the sites that are available. That's good. So you know, if we can find a way of keeping it going, and even the assessment is a very useful thing, let alone the leaflets. But it obviously that adds value as well. Thank you.
So just I noticed in item 1.4 talking about leaflets in preparation for Cleethorpes Country Park. So that falls within North East Lincolnshire. So I will see what funding streams might be available within North East Lincolnshire.
I've already got the funds for that.
Oh, you've got the funds for that.
I take it you wouldn't want just giving on your leaflet either. I take it you wouldn't want just giving on your leaflet either, but can you find that one out for me for North East Links?
I don't think, to be honest, if it's through the LAF, will North East Lincolnshire Council want to get involved? I don't know. I can ask, but once I ask the question, you know, we will get a response.
the leaflets being funded anyway, so, and in actual fact, it's partially done, isn't it? So. It's well on
But yeah, okay.
the way. Anything that we're currently.
Yeah, but for the future, you know, there may be funding available from North East Lincolnshire. You know, councillors, so Cleethorpes Country Park, they have ward councillors, they get a pot of money every year to spend within their ward. So within Cleethorpes Country Park, they might think, yeah, we'll pay to have some leaflets printed for Cleethorpes Country Park. They might not want to just giving stuff on it, but at least you get the leaflets printed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so yeah, there are ways we can sort of work.
And there's another leaflet that we initially wanted to do for of these links. So, you know, that could be a way forward. Maybe we move away from Lincolnshire and look at the North East links. Something we have to think about.
Anything else on agenda item 7 from anybody before we move on?
Have to disappear, Chairs.
Okay, all right, thanks very much.
Just one final question, really.
Yeah.
Is there no arrangements for the county council to receive charitable donations earmarked for specific purposes?
There is, and the forum can hold funds. We know that the forum is able to hold funds, and we have a budget code set up for that. The funds that come for the current leaflets are there, and there's purchase orders made by that, and that's all acceptable.
Yeah.
The issue was really.
So really what needs to happen is need to go one stage further and have some sort of organisation, rather like the Friends of a Hospital Fund, who are independent, but all all the funds they receive go for the benefit of that hospital, but they can then raise funds for specific projects. But I realise that involves setting up a whole new setup, which is not likely and certainly not going to solve the problem for this.
I gotta just say, going back about 4 meetings, I did put to the full forum a friends of group a way of doing things. There's no take up whatsoever, so that
Big job.
I think is not the way forward. But thanks for that.
Okay, like I say, I think this is worth having an agenda item at the next meeting, just purely talking about funding. Okay, moving on to agenda item 8, construction sites in the countryside. Members of the forum must review the report and agree the actions detailed within the report. John, do you want to talk us through this?
Yeah, you've seen in the previous 2 or 3 meetings, this item about construction sites in the countryside. And it's something that we all, I'm sure, have got close to our hearts in terms of seeing more concrete, more buildings and what have you, because of the way things are going, because of our population growing. One of my big concerns is this government in terms of the way it wishes to push through planning for buildings and doesn't appear to take into consideration the countryside and the users of the countryside and the wildlife and fauna, basically. So, and with that population growing, with Lincolnshire and Norfolk ever decreasing, because of the landmass and erosion, it's going to cause more problems. We're going to have an increased population in a smaller space. That's simple. Used to sort of higher, of course. So we need to do something about it. We need to do something about it, and I feel as a forum we could do something about it. But at the end of the day, it's not just down to me. If you want changes, you've got to do something yourselves in terms of getting this to move forward. So, you know, do you want as a forum us to look at this and include this and talk to other organisations? Because Lincolnshire and various other lefts doing things on their own is not going to make it a blind bit of difference, to be honest. And even if it's bigger organisations, it may not make any difference. But if you think of the generations to come, they're going to have a small amount of countryside to actually enjoy. The farming industry, well, it's going to be so minuscule in the future, and it's deteriorated deteriorated is the wrong word, but reducing land size, reducing the amount of crops that they harvest, some of it through bad winters and bad heavy. But we're more dependent on every other country, probably even China for food soon. And we need to be doing something about it. And we're in a position where we can talk to other organisations, get them at their headquarters, actually pushing government. And it needs to be more than what is seen as a Labour government or Conservative government. It needs to be something that goes on for a number of years, a plan that goes on for until it is completed, and you can see that we have access to the countryside for everyone, or way of getting to the countryside easily, preferably through a green corridor of some sort. If not, dare I say, it's a bus service that will get us there. So really, I'd like, Chair, first of all, a vote on whether the forum wants to take it forward. If they don't want to take it forward, then obviously I won't spend any more time on it in this forum.
And this is a huge subject, you know, it's a national subject. So I think in terms of, you know, the Lincolnshire, you know, Access Forum, you know, it's where you apply leverage and influence. Do you try and do it at national level, or do you try and sort of maintain it at local level?
It'll be at national level, but the only way we can do it is by
at national level. You have to work in conjunction with other partnerships. In terms of, I'll bring it in a second, Chris. In terms of local influence, obviously, and I sit on for North East Lincolnshire, I sit on the local plan review board, and we're just reviewing the local plan. So the government is making it mandatory for every year to have a local plan. It's the local plan which is the key document in terms of where the housing goes. So how it works, and you'll have seen, so in December, the government issued a new national planning policy framework. They increased the planning, the housing targets pretty much all over the country, certainly for the whole of Lincolnshire. So the government has now set mandatory housing targets. That goes back to the local authorities, who then have to produce a local plan which shows where those houses are going to go. So we're going through that in North East Lincolnshire at the moment. And what we're trying to do as that plan is developed is try and influence where that housing is going to avoid greenfield housing and so on. Try and make it a strategy within North East Lincolnshire Council that it's a brownfield first type approach and so on. So all that sort of stuff I think is absolutely relevant for this group to be doing and having influence into those local plans as they're reviewed. Problem is local plans are probably going to have to be completely reviewed anyway in terms of the new changes coming to local councils. But certainly as local plans are developed, that is a key time to be a consultee at local level in trying to influence where the housing goes. And I would say this group, and we were looking before, and you mentioned the wildlife trust, great. There's also the Greater Lincolnshire Nature Partnership. And I don't think we have any input into that partnership at the moment, do we? So I think that is a key organisation that we can work with others to try and push forward that influence. In terms of nationally, if you know all the local access forums start to act with one voice, then government will start to take things into account. But you know, ministers, you know, it's all about power and leverage. And if you don't have it, you're just discarded. It's as simple as that. And the government has said the priority is house building. And I think Angela Rayner's made the comment about youths are important, but people having houses are more important. That's where the priority is. So I think to combat that, I've been fighting North East Lincolnshire against the development of 3,500 houses now for 3 years across green fields. That's why I became a councillor. But it's difficult. It's hard to influence that policy, and you have to have public opinion behind you. I got voted as a councillor on that basis that I was going to fight it. Public opinion behind me, but trying to get that public support. But it means working with others. But I agree with the thrust of what you're saying, John. I don't know how all the members feel. Yeah, Barry. Yeah, and then Wendy.
I think you're right to sort of tackle the encroachment of the
pattern, you know, that it is always a bit sort of disincentive to use them if you feel like you're walking down a fenced corridor. But the other planning thing that I've got a bit of a beef about is all the other developments that's going on that are not housing that can increase the amount of footpaths. And if it was made as part of the planning permission to produce a solar farm or build a reservoir, we've recently, as it happens in Cherry William, the Environment Agency have taken ownership of a number of fields. I understand it's an offset against all the trees and bushes that they're taking down beside the rivers, that they've taken land to where they are going to plant trees and what have you as an offset to all the wildlife habitat destruction that they've taken. But they must, because if they're going to change use, presumably they've had to have planning permission for that. And if they've got planning permission, then it could be mandatory on that there's public access, for instance. So there's a whole scope for, if they're doing that in other parts of the county, there's scope for increasing access to the countryside as part of that planning process, shall I say? Which is, so it's not just housing, is my point. There's other things that are going on where it's possible to have an influence on the planning conditions that mean that it's possible to get extra footpaths and stuff. And I know one that we've commented on is local to us, where they're putting a solar farm in to get a behind the hedge path between two villages. So that's worth considering as well.
Okay, thanks, Barry. Wendy?
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think in terms of getting people involved in responding to local plans, neighbourhood plans, local transport plans, etc., that's the struggle that we've got, because they are such unwieldy documents. Nobody really understands what they're, there is a lack of understanding, should we say, about what impact they will have. And once they are written in stone, then it's very difficult, as you say, to be able to change the quota that's been allocated. And then you're arguing against putting it here or putting it here. And yeah, so that's certainly a challenge for me in my work role, is trying to engage people in actually making responses locally. So I don't know if as the LAF we can somehow simplify some of that information or raise particular things that would be helpful, that link with the countryside and the impact on the countryside from development. And the Biscathorpe appeal at the moment affects the Lindsay Way, the Lindsay Trail, sorry. So it's things like that where there's a real resonance with rights of way and outdoor access.
Yeah, I'll just comment on that. So there's two aspects. One is influencing the local plan in its formation, and the other thing is ensuring then that the council's feet are held to the fire in implementing their own strategies. So if you look at the Central Lincolnshire local plan, they've got strategies, about 10 strategies, 60 to 67, just dealing with environmental issues and how the countryside is impacted and so on. When planning applications go in for housing developments and so on, it's really important to keep an eagle eye on these things. And it is very, very labour intensive.
Yes.
And it's very easy to get bogged down. Yeah. Sorry.
Is there an opportunity for this group to put in suggestions to influence the local plan as it's redeveloped, rewritten? Would that be part of the role of this group?
Well, it's certainly something that can be considered. I mean, anybody can. These things have to go out for consultation. It's worth considering whether we should be a formal consultee. But yeah, I think you.
Yeah, well, talking about obviously joining together with other labs around the country. If we go along the east of the UK in particular, which is what we all probably know most about, the influx of enormous national infrastructure projects throughout the whole of Lincolnshire and going down through Norfolk, Suffolk and towards Essex. Surely, if we banded together with Norfolk, Essex and Suffolk labs, we might have people who were on the same wavelength as us, because I know there's huge public outcry against not each individual infrastructure project, but the amount that are being thrown into a small area of the country, and nobody's getting any say in it because they're national infrastructure projects. And whilst I appreciate putting the extra planning notices onto these sites and saying, can we have bridle ways, restricted byways, footpaths around these huge solar farms, deserts, walking from the town to walk around a solar farm, that's not countryside access. That's walking into the countryside to look at an industrial site. We won't have any countryside to even have a laugh for if it carries on at the rate it's going at the moment. This is the time that everybody, walkers, cyclists, canoeists, riders, farmers, people who live in the countryside, have to actually stop talking about it, formulate a plan and start doing something about it. Because, if we leave it too long, it'll be too late. There won't be anything left to talk about.
I agree.
And I mean, I've been looking at the maps of what's happening in the whole of Lincolnshire, and we all look at our own little areas, but when we look at the whole of the county, and then you add in North Suffolk, it's quite terrifying, to be honest.
Chris, you've got.
I like your suggestion of Waltham, not so much laughs across the country, John, but as within the county, joining up with other organisations which have a common interest in the quality of the countryside. I took part years ago in the inquiry was held for a local plan in front of the planning inspector, but the exact name of the document has changed every years. And I thought we were bringing forward some fairly common sense changes that didn't alter the whole structure of the plan at all. It was just to improve access for short journeys within the town for new developments. But the inspector didn't accept a single objection from the bodies that came there. And there were some from the Environment Agency that seemed to me to be just absolutely unnecessary. They knew what they were talking about, and it was very important they should come in there. And the inspector he seemed to just be there, see himself there, to rubber stamp what the district council had come up with in the first place.
Yeah. Well, I think, well, John's proposed that we write a letter to the
It's basically to the Lincolnshire Wildlife.
to the Lincolnshire Wildlife Trust.
That is to see if they've already got an interest, or already talking to the Wildlife Trust Federation, and whether they're trying to move it on, so that we can have an input or individual input. But what would be nice is the last did have East of England, was it East Midlands LAF group? So spoke to the individual chairs in that. We may have a force that can actually talk for us, rather than us all going our separate ways trying to get this or get something changed. I mean, we've already got, there's already guidelines that Deborah has agreed in terms of planning for cities and towns. Those guidelines need to be not guidelines, they need to be legally binding acts that people have to adhere to. We need something like that in the countryside, but we need to have a framework of what we need in the countryside. We're not going to stop the growing population. We're not going to stop the erosion of the land mass. We've got to come together and come up with something sensible. But it means that the big organisations actually get talking and get pushing things towards whatever is in government at the time.
Well, just for the first step, do members want this letter that John's suggesting to go to the Lincolnshire Wildlife Trust? Yes. Yeah.
Very proactive.
Yeah. Do people have a preference of whether it's to draft A or draft B?
Or anything else. I don't mind.
Could have a template taken from that.
Well, I don't think there's anything to lose by sending this. I don't see any downside to sending this letter. So, okay, we agree that. The other thing that I'd like to suggest as part of this sort of reaching out is that we have a look at the Greater Lincolnshire Nature organisation, the partnership, see what they do, see who belongs to it, and see what opportunity there is for us to get closer to them. See what they do, investigate that. So I'll take that on board, see what they do, and I'll report back at the next meeting. Okay.
Just can I suggest that we take whichever letter John prefers?
Yeah.
That's
I don't mind, to be
Yeah.
quite honest. That's sort of something, someone gets a reaction. I'll,
Would you prepare to delegate that to myself?
if that's okay with you.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and when that letter goes out, we'll copy all members so they see what's gone out.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Right. So we're just on work programme. Any comments on the work programme before we finish? You're good. Okay. Thanks very much.
I have to disappear.
Sorry.
If following from a comment, I noticed this drinking water is going to come and do a presentation. But if it doesn't crowd out the agenda too much, I think it might be useful to get the EA to come, the Environment Agency along to come and explain what they're doing with this, because I don't really understand what their obligations are, whether but it could make quite a big, if they are buying up tracts of land to effectively rewild up green space or whatever, it would be worth us understanding what benefit we might get from that.
Yeah, that's all.
What's around Green Water coming to talk to us about at the next meeting?
Yeah.
The solar farm.
No, it's the reservoir, that's going to put me off from everything in the world.
We've got 4 meetings a year. Meetings just a little bit more relaxed. We do have time for people to come in and just tell us what they're doing and take questions as well. So yeah, any other comments on the work program? Everybody happy with that? No. Okay. Any other urgent business? Anything burning on people's minds just before we finish?
If we're increasing the number of meetings, can I claim mileage?
Yeah, you can always claim mileage. I think I'll send you
I haven't
some.
bothered till now, Emily,
Yeah,
but it's a bit of a flog for me to get to Lincoln.
yeah, I'll send the form out to everybody and then you can.
Just out of interest, and people have different ideas. Does this time of meeting suit people, or for people for in the mornings, or people quite comfortable to have business time? This time, yeah.
Time for lunch in town.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. Okay. Right. Thanks. Thanks very much, everyone.
Yeah.
Few minutes and just trying to beat the traffic back.
You know.
I'm just pleased.
Yeah.
That I didn't follow.
Looking down. Again, I'm not come on the agenda.
You are, we have.
Get you back in.
We already have.
No, it didn't. It was working fine. Not logged on.
Yeah.
But I didn't say it there, it just open. And then I lost the internet, the Wi-Fi. What if I do that? Just recognise the authentication again.
Tiny screen too.
Both of my sons are serious IT, and one's an IT technician, works for an international building. You know, they're both treatment rates if I'm in the Stone Age. Oh, these are nice. Oh,
My husband, who's got no digital footprints whatsoever.
really? That's a vision. Yeah, so.
Yeah.
I have a big one.
Yeah, I like one.
Yeah.
Good to meet you.
If you make it a month, then like, We really need some.
That would be.
Yes, yes.
Yes, I know. Together.
Yes.
On my side and the landowner side.
Meeting because we joined just before lockdown. And the first meeting we were going to.
It's a strong group, and it worked okay. Find it. You don't have too many. There's someone.
Contributions.
Yeah, that's great to hear.
Yeah.
That's everything.
Chain. It's German's chill. Doing for people and everybody else on the end of the screen. During COVID, Chris, that guy was all on what to do.
Oh, that's why we were in the council chair.
Yeah. Maybe I talk through the ward councillor. Still waiting, I'm going to prepare for the parish council meeting. Give them a hard time.
I bet they're a bit less.
You're right. Very good. I was checking some ideas. We've got something there. They are proactive.
If you,
Your call.
any sort of meeting where.
Well, I've been sick. So it's near you.
I've
I've been just in the balcony. So, yes. All right. Fishing will always wrong.
Yeah.
Military staff college.
We've done this.
Oh, I think, yes, yeah, that's it.
Sorry, Chris, we've been working with,
Which is right.
for some more information. Well, it's a very busy month. Yes. You can give the name of the board council or covers that area. Maybe me talking to him to get certain information to produce one of these. We've got all of the dates. This is John's saying we need
Not to tell them exist.
to maybe just write
On the contacts.
Yeah.
It's still need to go. Pursue that. The wall council. Don't think they'll be able to sort of organise that for you, so I need to talk to Matthew Toffey. Yeah, no, Matthew, yeah, you know Matthew, so I'll have a talk to Matthew. That's going on, see what's happening for. Yeah, I talked to Matthew, then moving on to Erling. Ah, okay. Erling's responsible for the yes, the maintenance, yeah. If you drop me an email, what people need, yeah, and I'll take it from there. I'll speak to Erling and see what that's going to be done, because there may be some odd funding going as well.
Yeah.
I could also talk to the portfolio holder for the visitor. Because that's